Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I've got David here. He's going to give his presentation in a moment, which I'm really excited about. I know he's famous in our local Orlando devs group for every time the phrase state machines comes up, he pops up in our Slack magically.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to hear his presentation on state machines and learn a little bit more about stately AI as well. But first, I'm going to go through a little bit of intro here. I need to thank our sponsors because all of this obviously costs a bunch of money, and they help me make sure that I don't lose money every month and I can keep doing these events for you all. So I really appreciate them. First of all, we've got Stratic. If you're doing WordPress stuff, Stratic is an awesome thing to check out. It can basically turn your WordPress application, your WordPress site, into a Jamstack application, even with dynamic stuff going on. So definitely check out Stratic, stratic.com/signup. Khourshid is a really cool tool. It's new. I think they're on V3 now that they just released. Even though this says V2 of their beta, and then you can deploy your whole application to AWS using their system. Makes it super easy. Very, very cool. I definitely recommend checking that out. And Netlify, we're hosted on Netlify. I love Netlify, and I think some of you all know I like Jamstack. So yeah, love Netlify. Great service. Makes it super easy to build and deploy my site. I mean, this site gets updated every single day. So love Netlify. Thank you to all my sponsors. So we've got a couple upcoming events that I just announced. We got Building Better Teams Virtually with Jessica Craig. Jess is a great speaker, and she's going to be talking about how we can learn to build remote developer teams by taking some lessons from video games. And I'm really, really curious to see what that means. So if you want to join us on February 24th at 1 p.m., so we meet second and fourth Thursday at 1 p.m. So this will be our second February one. And then because February is short, only a couple weeks after that, we've got Maciej Palmowski, and he's speaking of WordPress. We're going to be talking about the ultimate WordPress CI/CD pipeline. He's going to be showing you how to set up your WordPress in Git and set up the whole deployment. So this should be a really, really great one if you're into WordPress, or even if you're just, you have to maintain a WordPress site. This would be a great opportunity to learn. As always, if you have feedback, please send it to brian@cfe.dev. I'd love to hear any feedback about the site or about these meetups, or if you want to speak or anything like that. Yeah, this session is recorded. You can come back as soon as it's over to the same URL you're at right now, and you can watch the recording via Crowdcast. Within about a week or two, I should have the edited version up on the website, so you can check that out as well. And then I want to just remind everybody, I've been doing this for now like 4.5 years, closing in on 5 years. And that's every month sometime, for the past few years, it's been twice a month, plus all the conferences we run. I've got every one of those session recordings posted to the website. And it's like, I think an underutilized gold mine there. You're talking sessions from just about people who are experts in the field, and they're all there, and they're all completely free. So just check out the archive and learn something new this weekend, or just enjoy watching. Some of them are very entertaining as well. It's just fun to watch. So go check it out. And obviously we've got more to come. I've got another meetup in March that I'm planning, and so on. So more events like Jam. So come check those out as well. You can follow us on CFE_dev on Twitter and on Instagram. And that is it for my intro. I'm going to turn it over to David. I'm going to put your screen up here so we're ready to go, and let him tell us all about state machines.
Hey, awesome. Thanks for having me. So yeah, today is going to be a little bit of live coding, a little bit of live not coding, and you'll see what I mean by that in a minute. So first of all, a little bit about myself. I live in Orlando, just like Brian here, but I am wearing a jacket because it's cold inside my house, and he's wearing a t-shirt because I guess it's not cold inside of his house. I don't know, maybe the air circulation or whatever is bad here. Not sure why there's a discrepancy, but anyway, I have been a software developer for about 10 years, and I've been very interested for most of my career in state machines and state charts, of course. And the reason that I'm interested in this is because application logic can get hairy, especially as you add more features and more requirements and specifications. And I suffered through this when I was a junior developer. We had like all of these complex workflows where you go from step to step. And like just trying to organize all of that logic, especially as you needed to add features, it just got really confusing over time. And it seemed that with normal programming languages and the way we normally develop things in frameworks, that there was no really good pattern to do this. And so that's why I took a time travel trip back like half a century and researched this thing called state machines. And so what's cool about state machines is that they're a visual formalism, which means that they could be visually represented, and they're a formalism, so they're visually exact. So technically, you could take those diagrams and make them, into something executable. So it's sort of like drawing code or diagramming code instead of actually typing out code, which seemed like sort of a fantasy to me at the time. But that's why I started XDate and wanted to just dive into how we could make something visualizable and also executable at the same time. And so I'm going to be describing like concepts of state machines and state charts, and also how XState works by doing an example. And so the example that I want to do is a pretty simple example. This is a video player like you would see on any landing page. And you could just imagine this as a specification or requirements that you got to implement in an app. And so we might have user stories like, and I'll just type them out here. As a user, I'm not going to type out the full specifications, but the video player should be minimized at first. So right now we see this video player, it's like an image. And then when I press play, then the video player, so video, should be maximized and it should start playing. So that's sort of the behavior that I want. Like I don't want it to play in this small thing over here. I want it to do the thing where it sort of goes full screen and then it starts playing. And I'll actually show an example of that that I just saw, because this is actually a pretty common pattern. In the Elgato website, there is a trailer video. So you could see this is just an image, but once you click watch the trailer, it sort of goes full screen and it starts playing the video right away. And so this video is playing. And if I press X, it's going to do a few things. It's going to stop the video and also, minimize it. So when I exit the video player, it should be minimized and it should stop playing the video. Also, when the video is done, then, obviously we don't want to keep staring at, the last frame of the video. That's not very useful. The video player should be minimized automatically. So this is just an example of the series of user stories that you might get in one of your applications that you need to implement. And so our job as developers is basically to translate these user stories into actual code. And the way we would do this normally is just looking at this and be like, okay, we could have a Boolean like let is playing equals false, let is minimized equals true at first, and just all of these variables that's just just determine the state of that part of the application that we're working in. But instead of using these Boolean variables, which definitely get messy the more you add Boolean variables, I propose using state machines. And so here's how state machines can make things like a lot more visually clear. So we're going to take these same requirements, and usually I would go to Excalidraw or something like that. But this time I'm going to go to stately.ai/editor. And so when you go to this website, you're going to be thrown into this visual editor that allows you to create state machines. And don't worry, I'm going to teach you like what state machines are if you're not familiar with them. So a state machine is comprised of a few parts. The three basic building blocks of a state machine are states, events, and transitions. So a finite state machine has as you could probably guess, a finite number of states. In this case, we have first state and second state. Now, when I say states, I'm not talking about any data such as the length of a video or attributes like that. I'm talking about behavior, like states that can contain the behavior of a component of your application. For example, one state could be playing, and one state can be paused. I'm actually going to make it lowercase. That's just my style. So it could either be playing or pause, and the application is going to have different behavior in whether the video is playing or paused. And so that behavior can be things like what's happening, what side effects are being executed, and also what events are possible from that state. So, for example, if your video is playing, and I'm just going to call this video player. Anyway, if your video is playing, then you could pause it, you could stop it, but you can't play it again. Like playing the video again makes no sense if it's already playing. Same thing with pause. If the video is paused, you can play it, but you can't pause a paused video. I mean, you can, but nothing should happen. And so there's like at best case scenario, like doing events where those events shouldn't do anything, it's just redundant. But at worst case scenario, you could get into some really serious bugs when a user tries to do an event in a state where they shouldn't be able to do that event. We saw this, I guess, a few years ago with the iPhone Facetime bug. Apparently, like when you started a video call and you added yourself to the conversation or just did a series of actions, you could listen in on the other, like to the other end of the phone call without the other person accepting the call. And so that should be an impossible scenario. Another very common use case is when I'm submitting a form and I press that submit button or whatever the button says, and I'm frustrated because it's taking a long time and I click that button a million times, it should not make another request. Like either the button should be disabled or it should just not handle that action. But what ends up happening, and you could try this out whenever you see it next time, is that it ends up making a ton of requests to the server. And so, you have to defensively program to prevent against that. But using a state machine is just a really natural way of containing those different behaviors. So in our video player, we actually have I'm just going to call it closed and open states here. 1 minute, or actually let's call it mini. So we have our states, and these are just like the two basic states. The video player is either going to be small and collapsed, which is the mini state, or it's going to be full and expanded. And by the way, I already have some styles over here that we're going to be using later for when the player is full, how that should look. So yeah, that's states. Now there's events and transitions. An event is something that causes transitions. An event is an occurrence of something happening. So for instance, in the mini state, we could have the toggle event. I'm just going to call it toggle. And so when the toggle event happens, and we don't need to know the exact details of how that toggle event can happen. We just need to identify it somehow. So we have toggle. It goes to the full state. And then when we toggle it again, it goes to mini. Or you could call this closed or something. These don't have to be the same event. I'm just demonstrating this with the same event for clarity. So now we could simulate this and see that when we're in the mini state and the toggle event happens, now we go to the full states. Again, if we're in the full state and the toggle event happens, now we go to the mini states. So what's cool about using this is you could actually export it to JSON, but I'm going to code it up manually just so you could see how you would use X states in order to express this state machine, which is a model of our application, directly in code. So obviously you need to have XState installed, and that's pretty much the only dependency. We're not going to be using any frameworks in this demonstration. I'm just going to be showing you how you would do it with XState, and we're going to go old school, even before the days of jQuery and all that, and use document.getElements by ID. Really useful stuff to know. I always recommend everyone brush up on their core basic web knowledge before jumping into frameworks or libraries or things like that. So I'm going to import, it's called create machine from XState. And so we're going to create a machine that basically describes these user stories and eliminates the use of Boolean variables. So we're going to make a machine. I'll just call it machine equals create machine. And this is going to, we don't need to give it an ID, but I'm just going to show it here to, just for clarity. And just because this looks nicer in a visualization. And so we need a few things in our state machine. I described that three basic parts of a state machine are the states, the events, and the transitions. But we also need an initial state, or we need to specify what is the first state that the machine is always in when it starts up. In this case, it's mini. So now we have a couple of states. We have mini, and I'm just going to make this an empty object for now. And we have full. So this is our state machine. And now we have to actually transition between those states. So that would be on, toggle, full, and full when we toggle. So on toggle, we go back to mini. All right, cool. So let's just verify that this works. I'm going to first console.log the machine.initial state dot value. And so this is going to be the finite state value of that machine. Ignore this first line over here, but yeah, we have mini right over here. And so if I have next state equals machine.transition from the first state, so the machine.initial state, or you could put undefined, it's up to you. And we pass in events like toggle. Let's console.log the next state, next state.value. So now you're going to see that it transitions to full. Let me show you that again. Okay, it's not going to do it, but that's okay. So you could use machine.transition as a pure function to basically determine what is the next state when I have a current state and I have this event. Now you might be asking, isn't this just really similar to Redux? And the answer is yes. It's like Redux with rules. You could consider machine.transition to basically be a reducer. So now let's make this alive. And by alive, I mean not just as a pure function, but as an entity that's actually holding its own state, receiving events, and updating its local state, based on the events that came in. So the way we do that, we have to import one other thing, which is interpret. We're going to interpret this machine. So I'm going to call it a service, interpret machine, sorry, dot on transition. And so this, I'm just adding a listener. So whenever the state changes, I'm going to console.log the state.value, and then we're going to start it. So right now, it's just going to log mini because it is in the mini state. But I actually want clicking this to toggle it. So sorry about that. I don't have Corona, I promise you. So I'm going to add something here. This is like one of those get the cake out of the oven things. But yeah, so we're going to add an event listener to the player, which is this. And so whenever we click it, we're just going to send that toggle event to the service. So the reason we're doing this is so you could see what happens when we click it, which is nothing right now. Let me just make sure that I have the right stuff. We have the video, we have the player. Yeah, let me just inspect this real quick. Okay, so here's our player. Debugging is always good. Okay, so we have the player, and we want to send that event. Let's just make sure it's being captured. So console.log clicked is okay. There we go. I don't know why it wasn't showing that, but yeah, you could see when it's clicked, it goes from mini to full to mini to full. See, so you could see it's going back and forth. That was really weird. It's like a bug that solved itself that I couldn't figure out why. Okay, so what I really like about on transition is that you could actually impart side effects in here, just to quickly test things out. So what I'm going to do is add that attribute, the state attribute. I'm going to add the state.value to that attribute. So state.value. So this is going to appear on the elements as data state equals mini or equals full. And so it's going to change that value. So now when I click, you're going to see it goes to full screen. And then when I click the player again, it goes to mini. So we have that part of the behavior working. And so that is one of the most basic state machines that that you could create. And so I know some of you might be asking like, okay, why would I do this? I could just use a Boolean for this. Remember, we have other requirements, and Booleans don't really scale for these requirements. And I'm going to show you how state machines can evolve to become state charts and become a little bit more powerful. So remember that one of our requirements is that when the player is full, we want this video to actually be playing. So we could do something called adding nested states. And so I'm going to, actually, no, I'm not going to add nested states. That comes later, but we are going to add another state chart feature, which is actions. And so I could say entry, and I'm just going to do video.play. Really nice API. This is a video element, so we could just call it .play, and it's going to play, and it's pretty awesome. And so exit, we have video dot pause, because we don't want the video to keep playing. So let me demonstrate what exactly these entry and exit actions are. So in entry action, so I'm just going to call this play video, is executed whenever you enter a state. And same thing with an exit action. So whenever you exit the state, you pause the video. And so the reason why these are important is because there's 3 types of effects that you could do. I mean, they're all the same. 3 types of actions I meant. There's entry actions, exit actions, and transition actions. The ones that are probably going to be most common are these transition actions. So I could have put play video over here. And so whenever this transition is taken, it's going to play the video and go into the full state. So the reason that you would want to use entry or exit actions is when you basically to dry things up. So when you see there's a lot of transitions and every single one of these transitions going into the full state plays the video, that's your sign that maybe you should move that action to the entry. And same thing with exit actions and things like that. So yeah, let's see if this works. I'm going to reload just to triple check. It's going to transpile modules and do all that. And so when I click here, it's actually going to play the video. And so if I exit out of it, it pauses the video. So, it goes here and it works just the same. Okay, that's awesome. There's something else though that I want to add. When this, and of course it's part of our specification too. When the video ends, we wanted to go back to the mini state. And so this is what I mean by by having those entry and exit actions. So I'm going to call this video dot ended. So when this happens, we also want to, I mean, obviously the video is going to be paused, but we do want to go back to the mini states. And so you could click simulate real quick, say toggle, and let's say I'm watching the video and the video ends. Okay, we verified that our logic is working. So let me go back here. And so we're going to do video.ended mini. And so what's great about this structure, by the way, is that um, you could change these transitions. So let's say that after the video ended, you wanted to pop up a form that says, what did you think of the video? Or enter your email to find out more information, or something that does something different. So now instead of like diving through the code and figuring out where to change that thing, you would just change it right here in the transition. Now, that video that ended is going to be, we could hook up that event here. So video.add event listener ended. I love the video API. It's so straightforward. Service.send, and we could just send the video.ended event. Okay, so now we can see that when we play this, it's going to go in full mode. Thankfully, it's only 4 seconds. And when it's done, it shrinks back down. So this is exactly what we want. And just for more measured, like let's say that we want the video to close when you press the escape key. So key.escape, mini, same sort of thing. And then we could just add an event listener. So I'm just going to do that right over here. So that whenever the escape key is pressed down, we go back to the mini state. Oh, so I forgot to press the escape key. So I'm going to press escape, and you could see that it just went back to that state. So that is a very small demonstration of how this little thing can express like logic of your complex applications. And just one more thing to show you, while we're working on making the brand new Stately Visual Editor able to visualize applications, we already have live inspection utilities that you could use. And so if you import inspect from xstate inspect, and then we inspect URL just stately.ai/viz inspects. I think that's what it is. And then I'm going to do iframe false. By default, the iframe is true. But right now, we just want to pop it up in a different window. And then we just set dev tools to true. Then this is going to show you the actual, basically the same state machine that we created over here. It's going to auto layout it and make it look nice. But you could see that's going like from mini to full and all of that. And so what's really cool about this is that if I interact with this application, you could see it's in the full state. And right now it's going to go back to mini because the video is going to end. Hopefully. Oh, wow. Does the video pause like while I... Okay, so you see it just went back to mini, and it goes back to mini over here as well. You could see the log of events over here. And so basically you have an inspection tool that you could look at in real time with the state machines you're using for your application. Now, this, of course, is doable with a reducer, but then the biggest thing that reducers are missing is a way to declaratively specify which actions or side effects are supposed to be executed. And so that's something that statecharts really excel at. Plus, this is a lot more concise than having to have switch statements or nested switch statements. So yeah, you could just think of this as a super powered reducer. But that's an overview of how xstates can help you visualize and visually create your application logic. And that's it.
And I'm muted. Like, brilliant. I didn't realize you were done yet, so I was like ready for the next part because that was awesome.
I could go on for hours, but
No, that was really cool. I love the little debugger. That's awesome. So under normally, if you have it in the iframe, is it going to be just like showing it at like at the bottom of the page or something like that?
It shows in an iframe, but you have to like style the iframe and put it somewhere on your page. Like there's a lot of extra work.
Yeah.
In
Okay.
yeah, but like so it might not be worth it to do that. But I think all you really have to do is do iframe data xdate, and actually let's see if this oops, can't do that. I did do that. I forget this is not React. So if I take this out, then yeah, it'll show in a very very tiny thing. So you
Yeah,
have
I
to
see
like
what
give
you're
it a
saying.
width and a height and everything.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. That's really cool. Uh, so we got a number of questions. Yaroslav asks, how much of your app do you recommend putting into Xstate?
that's a really good question. So um if you have a new app, like you're completely greenfield, then using something like Xdate can be really useful, even just as an organization tool for understanding what are all the events that could happen, what are all the states that I could be in. But honestly, Xstate is not something that you have to use like everywhere. It's not like an all-in type of thing. It's something where, let's say that you have an app or a legacy app, and you have a new component that you just want, you have some special logic for it. You could use Xstate just for that tiny component. So it's not meant to be something that dictates the entire state of your application. It definitely could do that, and it excels at doing that, but you could use it at the tiniest level to the biggest level in your app.
Okay, so that you could incrementally adopt it. Like say,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just want to
exactly.
add to this component for now, and then over time, kind of transition the application to use it.
Right. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's it. I think we kind of, in my experience, like when I'm building this stuff, like you start adding states. If you don't think about this ahead of time, you're adding states kind of without giving much thought to it, to like what the different states of a particular page or whatever part of the application are,
Hmm.
and then you end up, that's where you end up with those kind of problems you described, where it's like I
Right.
didn't really think about like, oh, I just sat there and I'm like, okay, I need to add, they asked me to add this in, so I'm going to go in and add it, and didn't realize that that conflicts with a different state, and we end up with a mess of something. So um so my thinking there is like it's probably good to add this even when the states are simple and you don't have many, but at least then it can grow without causing problems, right?
Right, exactly. I say like a good rule of thumb is if there's any possibility that you might have like, say more than two states in your application, because a lot of people say I don't need X state or I don't even need state machines or anything right now because my application is so simple. And to that, I say applications don't stay simple. And the
Right.
applications that do stay simple, there's going to be like, and there already is like an infinite number of tools that could already like do those kinds of applications. Like those simple CRUD applications, which even those have multiple states in them. But you want to code in a way that lets you scale complexity over time, not in
Right.
a way that's just like the easiest way to do it. And that's why, people say Xdata is a bit of a learning curve, which it is, but you're not learning Xdata. You're learning state modeling and state machines and event driven architectures, all things that are really useful whether you're using Xdata or not.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, granted, XState better than anybody, so it was easy to watch you do it. But it didn't seem that difficult. So it definitely seems like something wouldn't be that steep of a learning curve. But
Right.
you know, um, okay, we got a bunch of other questions. So Jimmy asks, what are your thoughts on how this aligns or differs with RX? These seem to solve similar issues in terms of state and derived state. Do you agree? When would you use X state versus RX? When would you combine them?
So first of all, I'll say that Xstate actually works pretty well with RxJS. The interpreted machine, so this service over here, is actually subscribable. You could do, with RxJS, like on states equals from, and if you know RxJS, you know what this from is. So from service, and then you're done. You also have service.subscribe if you want to subscribe directly to it, and it takes either an observer or those functions. RxJS has a pretty interesting function signature for that, causing some issues, but it works. So basically this is subscribable. The biggest difference though between something like this and RxJS is RxJS, you have a source and you're listening for emitted values. You can't really talk back to an observable. That's unless you do something weird like have a behavior subject that forwards those events over to a scan operator or something like that. But that's not really a first class concept. I would call like these things, which I call actors. It's very similar to the actor model. I know people have a very strict definition of that, but these are things that are observables and things where you could send data to. So you could send events, receive events, and it's like an observable that could also spawn other observables too. So it's sort of like super powered observables.
Okay. All right. I don't know a lot about RxJS, so a lot of that was over my head. That made
sense to some people.
Hopefully, Jimmy, you got your answer. So Linda asked, would love to hear if the visual tools would potentially be open to other state management tools in the future, NGRX maybe.
I love that question. Yeah, we were actually just talking about how like within our team, how this could maybe take like a Redux reducer or something from like you said, NGRX, and at the very least visualize all the events that are possible, because most of the time the way that those state management libraries are, they don't have finite states like this. They have a bunch of Boolean variables, or you might be defining these ad hoc with like a status enum or something like that. But at the very least, just having this and being able to simulate it is pretty nice. So it is one of our big goals. And also the visual editor, we have much bigger goals than just having this as something that could visualize X state machines. We want this to be the directed graph tool for anything that can be represented by a directed graph. And it turns out there's a lot of things like that, like even GitHub Actions, CI/CD pipelines, workflows, different things like that. So we want both different inputs to this and different outputs as well, like being able to express this as an SVG diagram that you could put anywhere. We have a lot of big plans for this. So the answer is yes, we're thinking about other state management tools as well.
Cool. Yeah, I love your idea of the GitHub Actions, because I found when I tend to write those, like kind of understanding all the different parts when they get complex can be hard to visualize, and the writing when you write it out in YAML or whatever, it's not hard. It's trying to wrap your head around what the heck is going on. The logic of it is difficult.
Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. So Michael asks, any reason to do play and pause and entry and exit on one state and not entry on both states?
Well, you can honestly, this state modeling or like modeling your application logic is more of an art than a science. So some people might want to just like put this play video action on toggle and put pause video on this toggle that goes out to mini, or maybe this video ended thing, or maybe something else like the key.escape thing that we saw. It's really up to you. So honestly, it's one of those things where you have to just keep modeling stuff, see what's best, but modeling is better than not modeling. And so the way we typically code applications, we forget to plan stuff out like that. But at least now you have a visual framework for, oh, I could put this here, or I could reuse this over here, or something like that.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Jimmy also asks, are there XState integrations for native mobile?
So I do native mobile. It depends what you're asking. Like Swift and Android, not quite yet. I know that we do want to support different languages in the future. People have used XState in React native applications though, and anywhere that JavaScript is a target, you could also use XState. It has 0 dependencies. It works server side, browser side, wherever you want. So in the future, we'll support other languages and frameworks too.
Okay. Yeah. So right now it's just JavaScript, right? Like the export
Yeah.
anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
you could visualize anything here, but the export would be just for like something that can consume for XState JavaScript,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense. Um, okay, so Kyle wants to know, can we get the code for the example you gave?
Yeah, I'll share it. Just I'll give you the code sandbox, and you could distribute that however you want.
Yeah, we could just throw it in the chat here if you want to
Oh
throw it
yeah,
in our
sure.
chat, and I'll copy the link over and put it in the chat here.
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah, awesome. Kyle, that was an easy question to answer. So Kyle also asks, would you have multiple state machines in a single page app or just one?
Oh yeah, you definitely can, and that's also one of the biggest deviations from things like Vuex, Redux, NGRX is that there's no global like huge mega reducer that controls all of your application logic. That's just not practical because you have local state, you have global state, but you also have state that's in between, shared between components but not necessarily global or local. And so with X state you could have many machines, for different parts of your app, and those machines can also talk to each other. And so that's what we find a really powerful part to all this, and that's a part of what's called the actor model, which I definitely recommend reading up on. And so it turns out that the actor model is actually really useful in front end applications where a lot of things can be happening at the same time, and different things need to talk to each other.
Okay, so right, so would you typically have like these machines be per component or?
Yeah, you can do that. But I just want to note that it's also possible to have that global machine at top and have other things listen to it and send events to it.
Okay,
Again, it's a modeling question. It's really up to you.
okay,
Well, you and your team.
right. So, but when you do it, what's your usual, like, you usually have that global one and then
Well, yeah. So I will say, like, even in the visual editor and the visualizer, all of these are using XState, of course, and we do have multiple machines. For example, we have a Canvas machine over here. We have it's called a press session tracker machine, just to track the interactions here. We also have state machines for even the smaller things like these inline labels and things like that. So that just gives you an example of how all these machines do work together. Oh yeah, of course we have a machine for controlling simulation as well.
okay.
Yeah.
Um, Jimmy has asked again, is there a first class idea of async transitions between states, or do you split transition into started, ended events states? Think specifically about animation as a result of a transition.
Yeah, so state transitions are, like, by definition, and we can't change this because it's the mathematical definition, they're zero time. So you conceptually, when a transition happens, it goes directly to another state. However, that doesn't mean that you can't express animations. And actually, animations are really awesome to express with state machines. Let's say that you want an animation here. I could have a state called opening. And so on toggle, we could go to opening, and after like 2 seconds, then we could go to full. uh and so you could actually see that over here. This is actually pretty easy to demonstrate, but if I click here, it goes opening for 2 seconds and then full. And then so you could just imagine that opening is some sort of animation or something like that. So yeah, instead of saying that this toggle is an async transition, because that's not something that exists, you would have a state that represents that in between states.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense. And so that middle state would actually like change whatever trigger the animation, or would it be kind of
Yeah.
triggered by?
So you could even do something like entry, play, open, animation, and then like after some time go to full. Or you could even invoke something where its source is open. Like, we'll figure out the details for that later. And then when that's done, you go to full. And so that's how you could express that.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Mikhail asks, where can he get a cool stately jacket like that? He wants some X State merch.
Yeah, that's we actually don't really sell this. This is just something that we had for our team. But I guess
Yeah.
a lot of people have been asking, so maybe we could try to do that. But we do have other swag. So if you find me in person or whatever, we have X State stickers to give out. So
Very
even
cool.
Angular ones as well.
Well, maybe for those folks in Orlando, maybe
yeah.
if you're at one of the ODevs coming up, maybe they can get some X State merch there.
Yeah.
Or stickers at least, anyway. And then we'll wait on the jackets. It looks nice though. Not, I got long sleeves on. It's not like I'm wearing.
Okay. It looks like a t-shirt, so I'm like,
Yeah, I
must
mean,
be warm there.
it's not that cold, but it's not warm necessarily.
Right. Yeah. It's cold for Florida.
Yeah, it has been for a while, hasn't it? All right, so it looks like that's everybody's questions answered. I really appreciate all the questions. This was great having a conversation there after everybody seemed to have a lot of questions, particularly Jimmy. Thanks for all the questions. Anyway, David, thank you so much for this presentation. It was really, really cool. I think I hadn't checked out X State. Honestly, I didn't know a lot about state machines other than the little bit I think I've heard from you present before. So it looks really awesome and definitely something I want to check out.
Awesome.
So yeah. So thank you for that. And Stately, the editor looks great too. Congrats on the open beta.
Thanks.
So everybody will be back in 2 weeks. Well, I'll be back in 2 weeks, and we're going to learn how to build great remote development teams by learning from video games. So hopefully you'll join us then. See you soon. Bye.
Bye, everyone.